Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. My name is Oluyemi Adeosun. Tonight, we'll be looking at the topic handling whistleblowing, workplace misconduct, and conflict of interest. Quite a mouthful. And our facilitator is one of our regulars, somebody who has taken the bull by the horn, especially the second half of the year, and is trying to give back to the HR community. His name is Olakunle Onge, and he's the lead HR operations for Fume House Group. Notwithstanding, I'm still going to read his profile to our hearing. Olukunle is a seasoned HR professional with over 7 years of progressive experience across diverse HR functions, including HR operations, talent acquisition, performance management, payroll administration, and policy development. Ladies and gentlemen, at Film House Group, where is the lead HR operations, he drives strategic HR initiatives, ensuring seamless policy implementation, process optimization, experience enhancement for the workforce of over 200. Throughout his career, ladies and gentlemen, Kule has successfully partnered with organizations across industries, including technology, travel, and consulting. He has also executed C-suite recruitment champion, performance management frameworks, and coordinated impactful training interventions. His work consistently reflects a strong focus on efficiency, compliance, and aligning HR practices with business objectives. Ladies and gentlemen, during his free time, Kunle enjoys watching movies, reading books, and hanging out with friends. Tonight, yet again, on the topic handling whistleblowing, workplace misconduct, and conflict of interest. If you don't have any conflict of interest, please let's welcome Kunle with various emojis, emoticons, and appreciating. You have the floor, my brother.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Yemi. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, sir. Before I go into today's topic, I'd like to say a big thank you to Dr. Yemi for this privilege and platform to always give back to the HR community. Thank you very much, sir, for the privilege. So this evening, I will be speaking on the topic handling whistleblowing, workplace misconduct, and conflicts of interest. So as HR, one of the major things that over the course of our careers, even if you're just about 6 months, 8 months into the profession, one thing you always notice is that what the managing of people is not an easy business. The managing of people is not an easy business. Many times, in fact, just how to manage them, how to ensure that they are giving their optimum and every time it takes the bulk of our day, apart from even just talking about their welfare, trying to ensure that they have all the right working tools, all of that. But the management of them is not an easy thing. And you agree with me that when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, or more people in a place, there will tend to be certain things, even though you've set out rules and regulations, code of conduct, there will be certain things still that rises to the point of, oh, we need to address this, we need to correct this, we need to ensure that everything works out smoothly the way it's meant to be. And that forms a part of what we do as HR. And so this evening, we'll be looking at the topic, handling whistleblowing. We'll look at what whistleblowing is all about, how to ensure that we are following the law where that is concerned, and how to also come up with a framework that will help us to create a very fair and just and open and whistleblowing policy or framework, and also what workplace misconduct looks like and what conflict of interest is. Conflict of interest, I believe, is one of the major things that even in some organizations, when you join, they will ask you to sign a non-compete and all those kind of clauses. So conflict of interest, we'll be looking at all of that. So yes, first thing is to hide or disclose. That's our introduction. Now, company policies and processes are designed to protect the employees. They are designed to protect the management and then the organization as a whole. That is why we come up with policies, we come up with processes every time. There is a particular thing I tell members of staff where I work, after doing trainings, maybe for team members or senior operations, I tell them that, see, follow the process so that it is the process that fails and not the human. Because when the human fails, then we now have to start going out all up and saying disciplinary actions and all. But if it's a process failure, then that means what? We look at the process and rework it. And we did all of that because of what we do not find as individuals. We all have ideas, we have beautiful ideas, but sometimes your idea is not what is needed. What is needed is what to follow the procedure, like a soldier will do, follow the procedure. And then the reason also behind creating policies and processes is that what we use it as a way to maintain integrity and trust. We use it as a way. For instance, if you have a cash handling policy for QSRs or organizations that deal with a whole lot of cash movements, either via hand, which is your actual cash, or even transfer into bank accounts. If you're not creating a process around it, if you're not creating a process around it, you're not creating policies that says, okay, when a customer comes in to buy from you, this is where they pay the money into, or this is where you put the cash that you've been given in the safe, in the till area. If you don't have all of that process, you can open up such individuals to theft, to fraud. A manager I want to work with, one of the things that he said is that if you put a thief or if you put an honest man where there's a lot of money and you don't create structure, he can become a thief. And that is why we come up with policies and processes. Now, we don't just judge organizations just on the performance of the organization or even the individuals within the organization, but also on the ethics, also on the code of conduct, the way we conduct ourselves, the way we do business, everything. Those are the things that we judge businesses on. And whistleblowing, workplace misconduct, conflict of interest are areas when we create policies or procedures that we focus on, we look at. So it is okay if before this training, before this webinar, this evening or whenever you get to watch it, it's okay if you do not have one. It's okay, but you can always do what you can always create. You can always create one. So yes, there are three areas that we do not ignore, because if you do ignore it, there's a tendency to create that you will cause what? A reputational or financial or even an illegal harm to the company. During the course of this training, we'll see how that can affect the organization. And they are not just an HR issue. This is actually a compliance thing. It's not just about the HR. It's actually a compliance thing, in the sense that even as a country, we have whistleblowing policies. Civil service has code of conduct, all of that in place, even as a country. So it is not just an HR thing. It's not just, company. No, it is a widespread thing. And it is also one of the things that certain investors, if they want to invest in your organization and they're looking at the different policies you have in place, they will want to see, just to be able to instill confidence in them. And then even for employee morale. Now, a good and balanced mix of all three of these, it goes a very long way to build a positive workplace culture. First, we'll talk about whistleblowing. What is whistleblowing? Whistleblowing is when someone inside or connected to an organization reports on ethical, illegal, or harmful practices that they've observed. So we have created a process. So when somebody deviates from that process and that staff or even a guest, even a customer, notices it and reports, that process of reporting is what is whistleblowing. That is what whistleblowing is. And this whistleblowing can come in the form of, or it can be on fraud, on corruption, harassment of any form. It can be safety issues. We all know that by regulation, we are meant to all have fire extinguishers in the company. So if, for instance, you do not have at all, and then a new staff joins, or even a customer comes in, or a client comes in and sees that, and he can immediately go or you guys don't have fire extinguishers, I think you should look into that. That's a form of blowing the whistle. He has called your attention to that safety issue. And then any other violation of company policy or even of company law, some of those kind of violation can come in the form of if you have carpools in your organization, where we all know by what policies that we all set across all of our organizations, the cars or the buses that belong to the company should not be used by the driver for private for private and anything private. Maybe they've gone to drop off staff at the mainland, the office on the island. They now went to drop off staff at the mainland, and then on their way back to the island, they now pick up individuals. By company policy, that is wrong. And anybody, even if a staff sees them on the road, or even an individual that probably knows the company, has somebody's number in the company, can call up and say, "Oh, I just saw your driver picking up passengers at Yanowolo." Those are whistleblowing. And that's so it is not just your employees within the organization that can blow the whistle. You also have contractors, vendors that work with you that can blow the whistle. You can blow the whistle in the form of there's somebody negotiating with them, and the person tells them, okay, when you're sending your invoice, put 3 million, but you know that this project is for 2 million. So what's going to happen is that once they pay the 3 million to you, I'll give you an account number, you pay 1 million to that contractor. That vendor can do what? Can immediately report, or a supplier, or even customers, like I mentioned already, and even strangers. They can see something going wrong and make a formal report. What matters, the chronos of the report, the chronos of blowing the whistle, is that what? The information that is being given is done in good faith. That sometimes the information are being given and is done in bad faith. It can happen in the form of two people have been conniving to dupe the company, but because okay, one of them now has renegade or change the terms without due deliberation between the two of them, it will now come and report. I'm not saying you will not still look at it, because you need to investigate every report that you get on your whistleblowing platform or through your whistleblowing policy. You need to investigate every report. So when you find that out, you take the necessary action. But most times, 90% of the time, let me say 80% of the time, whistleblowing is done by a person in good faith. It is not gossip or malice. It is not gossip or malice. Actual whistleblowing is what? Is not gossip or malice. It is something that is done in good faith and is always about raising genuine concerns. And usually it should come with supporting evidence where the reporter can get responding and supporting evidence. However, even if there are no evidences to support the report that has been sent, you still need to do your own investigations. Even when there are evidences, you still need to what? You still need to verify that those evidences are what are rightly are right and they are correct. And it is not always external, it can be internal reporting first. So we'll first look at some legal and regulatory framework where whistleblowing is concerned. The first thing we need to know is that whistleblowers are protected under the letters of the law in Nigeria and anywhere across the world. Anywhere across the world, there are laws in place, there are acts, there are bills that have been passed in the legislature, there are laws in place that protect whistleblowers, especially since the turn of the 2000s. There have now been regular updates to the whistleblowing policies across different countries. You have some in 2000, 2002, 2004, 2010. Because people are now finding out that this thing called whistleblowing is actually a good mechanism when it is being used rightly and it is done in good faith. So there has now been many updates. There have been protections to whistleblowers. They've been, okay, this is how you go about it. This is where you can report this kind of issue to. This is where you can also send your evidences. This is what you can do. And then the law in the way it has been set out, it protects the whistleblowers from what? From retaliation or intimidation because they've blown the whistle. So nobody should blow the whistle. Nobody should make a report about a wrongdoing that they've noticed, and then they face retaliation from whoever they reported, or they face intimidation from the friends of whoever they've reported, because first things, we know in HR profession, 90% of what we do, if not 100% of what we do, we treat with what? With confidentiality. We treat with confidentiality. There's something I tell people, or let me say there's a training I've undergone through my pastor that makes me understand something. If a meeting is called and it is not decided in that meeting that this person that is absent, this person that is absent needs to also know what has been discussed, then there is no business, you have no business discussing it with the person. You have no business. And that's one thing I've taken into the my career also. I don't care. If I'm in a meeting and I come out of that meeting and somebody says, oh, what meeting are you having? I'll say, oh, well, we're just having a meeting on this. Oh, what do people not discuss? I'll look at you funny, like, okay, why do you want to know? Because that meeting, if you needed to know, you'll have been a part of the meeting, or have been mentioned in that meeting that was. You need to know. If the convener of the meeting now feels it right for you to know, you will be brought in. And I've also been brought into meetings that halfway, maybe they've already done 2 preliminary meetings. I come in at the 3rd meeting. They're discussing about things that have happened before. Sometimes what I just do, many times I don't say anything until when they now need me to step in and they say, oh, do you know about it? I say, no, I was not in your previous meetings, and then they'll let me know. But sometimes I just immediately mention that, oh, I was not in the previous meetings. Can you fill me in? So they fill me in on what I need to know. And currently, right now in Nigeria, we have a bill that that is undergoing reading. It has passed the 2nd reading, and that is the public interest disclosure bill. So it's meant to be a sort of protection for whistleblowers, but it is currently still pending in the National Assembly. But it has passed the 2nd reading, so we're just waiting on it to go through the 3rd reading. So, and that bill on its own, it just adds to what we already have, but it is now really it's now really speaking to protecting across board whistleblowers. And it just speaks to the great support that whistleblowers and whistleblowing has now gotten, especially in Nigeria, and how people are now going all out to protect even the information and the safety of whistleblowers. And in public sector, for instance, the ICPC Act of 2000, which set up the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offenses Commission, even though it was set up majorly for public sector, but right now it has expanded so much to also still include private sector and really everything that goes on within the country. And it provides a channel for reporting corruption that has to do with practices. Let's say you're meant to get, you've gone to a civil service office, you're trying to apply for a grant, you're trying to get certain documental information, and they're telling you, oh, you have to grease our palm first. ICPC is a place to report to for those kind of offenses. And the EFCC Act, the act that set up the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission in 2004 as amended. The initial act, I think, was in 2000 or 2002, thereabout, but 2004 as amended, and that was under the retired General Olusegun Obasanjo's administration as president of Nigeria. For EFCC, what they majorly cover are what economic and financial crimes. That's crimes that has to do with money, with finance, or the economy as a whole. So the idea behind it really was that we need to now have a separate commission from the ICPC, since the ICPC was really more about conduct, was really more about the way people behave, really speaking more to processes and procedures. So let us have something that speaks towards finance, speaks to the economy, people embezzling money, even though conduct is also still interlocked in that conversation. So yeah, so for all of these acts and regulations, there are key elements that cut across all of them, key elements. And the first one is what confidentiality of the whistleblower's identity. Like I've said already, confidentiality is 90%, even 100% of what we do as HR. It is 90%. You're not meant to just be a loose-mouthed person. Fine, we can have friends with the organization, but you should also keep certain information on the need to know. And for whistleblowing, the number one key element is what is confidentiality of the identity of the whistleblower. It needs only to be disclosed to people that really, really, really need to know. Yeah, sometimes even as HR, we handle certain cases. The manager involved does not know who the person is. It's just you that, as HR, that knows. You just always keep it what, oh, anonymous complaints, anonymous complaints. There are many times I've done investigations about reports that we've gotten. When I'm giving my report, and it's outside of just my manager in the HR department or my fellow team members in the HR department, and I'm talking to somebody else that needs to know about the situation. I just keep mentioning, oh, I got it from a team member. I got it from a team member. I'm not going to mention the exact team member that I got that information from. And then another element is what is protection from retaliation. So retaliation should not come in any form at all. So some form that retaliation can come is a dismissal. All of a sudden, you just cook up an incident and say, oh, this person, you have done this, and just rush the process. Oh, the person is out of the system. No, for blowing the whistle, they cannot be dismissal. They cannot even be a demotion. The person cannot be a manager and then suddenly becomes an officer or is a level 4, now becomes level 3. Just something haphazard and they are looking like, or any form of harassment and saying, should be you. I don't know, I reported this matter, but don't worry, you will see. No, they can't. The law already sets out a buffer against all of that. And there has to be a clear channel for reporting, whether internal or external. There has to be what? A clear channel. That's why EFCC, they have offices around, they have emails, they have phone number that you can call. ICPC, the same thing. And then in some cases, in most cases, I know for EFCC, I think the policy for EFCC is that the whistleblower will get, I think, is it 5 or 10% of the total money that is recovered. And that is just the reason for putting that kind of financial gain to the whistleblower is just to encourage people to blow the whistle more often, even though that also has its own adverse effect, because people can tend to just report anything without having concrete evidence. And that's why your own investigations will also come in. So why do we even encourage whistleblowing? We're not using it to invite trouble, right? Majorly, whistleblowing when done very well, it helps to quickly catch all those little problems that can become something big later. Somebody can quickly blow the whistle about one relationship in the office that can tomorrow become a sexual harassment case. Because we've seen many situations, or we've seen some situations where somebody comes and reports that, oh, this manager is sexually harassing me. By the time you deep dive, sometimes, not all of the times, by the time you deep dive, sometimes you find out that it was a relationship gone bad or a love interest gone bad, or you just all of a sudden you're seeing two guys in the office that are always fighting and wondering what is going on. And you now find out that, oh, they've been going after the same person, or all those kind of things. Or a manager is just victimizing a team member, a member of the team, one way or the other, and then you do a deep dive and now seeing that, okay, there was one little misunderstanding that happened the other day. So that's one of the why we encourage, just for us to be able to catch those things when they are still so little, before they now become big. So we encourage it to know that what we encourage whistleblowing, because when employees know that they can safely raise concerns, you can address the issues fast before it festers. When they know that this concern, I can safely raise it, I can just talk to HR, I can talk to somebody along that chain, and I can quickly and it's going to what? Be resolved. So you are doing that just to encourage them. And then also for early detection of fraud and misconduct. I mentioned misconduct, something along the lines of misconduct, when someone is able to quickly tell you that it's like these two people are going out though, or they send they know. I know sometimes in the past, in organizations that I've worked in, I got email saying that, dear HR, we would like to bring to your notice that so and so manager, so and so team member have always been leaving the sites together. They've been leaving the office together. They come to the office at the same time, and on lunch they go together. And then you're now going to go and check, and then you now see that manager direct line, why you having such amorous relationship with a direct line. And then, so we encourage whistleblowing because it helps us to protect our reputation fast and quickly enough. Let's say, for instance, you're a company that offers services to individuals, external individuals, and you have somebody within the company now that is inflating budgets or getting substandard items. For instance, in a construction firm, you've been commissioned to build 7 rows of 2-bedroom apartments. And the site manager, the site engineer now, instead of buying the 9 mm iron rods, is buying 6 mm iron rods because already that drop in what is meant to buy would save some money and all of that. But it's not going to give the quality that has already been agreed on. Whistleblowing policy, if there's a whistleblowing policy that is known to everyone, even people that are working on site, or there's even just something that they just paste on the side that says, please, if you notice anything, you can call this number or send an email to this. Somebody can pick that up and quickly send it. What now happens is that when you get that information quickly and you act on it, you find that out and you quickly rectify it, you have protected the reputation of the company and you have done a damage control, and you would inadvertently save yourself a whole lot of backlash that would have happened and even loss that might have occurred from such an act. And then it helps you resolve. So you'll have also resolved that issue internally quickly before it now becomes a public thing. Maybe by the time you're not handing over to the clients, or the client pays a surprise visit to the site and now sees what is going on and goes, oh, so this is how this organization works. And then it also helps to build a culture of trust and accountability. So staff will trust that the company has the best instance. We are not so focused on profits. It's not just profit for you, even though that is the focus of the company, but it's not just profit on you, but you are also keen on integrity. You're also keen on getting integrity no matter the level the person may be. You're also very, very keen on integrity. Now, and people are less likely to leave. There are some people that are less likely to leave if they know that management listens to the concerns of individuals, of everybody within the organization. And some people think that whistleblowing will lead to false complaints. Like I mentioned already, sometimes you would have that kind of situation. But in reality, when you set out clear policies, you make it clear in your policy that says you need to, for this kind of occurrences, we will need supporting evidence, and you do your investigations fairly, and you carry out your procedures, you reduce that false complaints to a very, very, what's it called? To next to nothing. You reduce that false complaints risks to next to nothing, if not eliminate it entirely from the system entirely. Now we'll look at what a framework for whistleblowing looks like. A whistleblowing framework that can work for your organization. So the first thing is that employees need a clear, a safe, and simple process. It cannot be complex. It cannot be something that they have to go for a masterclass on. It has to be clear, it has to be safe, and it has to be very, very simple. And the framework is something that's going to ensure consistency. It's going to ensure fairness, and will also comply to the legal requirements in handling whistleblowing. It has to be a framework that does that. So how to start out is first things first is a clear policy document. You need to create a clear policy document. So you spell out what constitutes a reportable misconduct. You spell it out. Okay, this is what we are going to be looking at. These are some of the things. You might not be able to spell out every single thing. These are some of the things that will also act as a guide to others that might want to report a situation. And this really speaks mostly to internal staff. But for external staff, you can still just mention one or two things. I know that many of us, some trucks that we see passing, all these haulage trucks, even some Dangote trucks and all the rest, we'll see there, is my driving reckless? If so, call these numbers and then they go ahead to list out some numbers. That is whistleblowing. That's a platform for what? For whistleblowing. And you can see how simple and direct that is. And it's not something that is so complex. And then you have your policy document going to state how you're going to handle once the report has been gotten, how you're going to handle it. Or it will take 2 to 3 days for investigations, 4 days for us to present the matter before the person who has been accused. And then by week 4 or week 2 or week 3, we will have concluded and feedback will be given to the whistleblower. And then you also stated there that the identity of every whistleblower is protected and you will not be divulging, even though for most whistleblowing platforms, what has now been done is we set it up in a way that we cannot record cannot record your email addresses if it's to send an email, cannot record your email. That's when you create like a Google form for it or a Microsoft form. You cannot record email addresses. You just go on that link, you report the situation, or even for phone numbers, it's just like a call-in kind of line that you cannot call out from, all those kind of things. And then you create multiple reporting channels. There has to be various different ways to what? To make the report. You can start with, you can have an anonymous hotline. You can just, anonymous hotline where you just call in, it doesn't save or store any phone numbers. It can just be like a landline or something. It doesn't save or store any phone numbers. A dedicated email address that is just for whistleblowing, and there's going to be an email address that is just for whistleblowing, a secure website portal, and then some companies even go as far as independent third-party platform. They have like a consultant that works with them, and those are people that will now push out how to make reports, whistleblowing reports, and they will now do all of the investigation once they're reaching out, devoid of any influence from internal. And then you also have to now also let everybody know that what you're going to spell out the confidentiality clauses that are in there, and also states that there is assurance of non-retaliation, victimization, intimidation of any kind. You also spell it out in the policy. And then you have to run periodic trainings on it. It doesn't have to be every month. It can be maybe once every quarter or once in a year, half year, you do it once or twice in a year. But there just has to be periodic trainings. Another way that you can also come up with that is that if there is like a communication that goes out from HR to all staff from time to time, you can just choose that, okay, today's communication is going to be about the whistleblowing policy and how some key features from the whistleblowing policies. And then you also need to make it a part of the induction for the new hires so that what they know from day one that this is an option for them. They know from day one. It's not just until when they now have issues and they're asking around. So they need to know from the beginning of their employment with the organization. And most importantly, or one of the most important aspects of this is what senior leadership from the MD, from the CEO, whoever is at the top down. Senior leadership needs to show what that they visibly, that they support it, that they understand it. They need to also act as champions for this, because people will feel more comfortable when, aside from HR telling them, CEO is telling them, the CFO is telling them, the head of marketing is telling them, they will feel more comfortable to now feel like, okay, yes, they can make these reports. They can actually go out, and then they cannot have a body language of, well, HR was on that sent me, let me just do this. They can't have that kind of body language. They should not be able to, they should not pass that body language. They should not pass it across. So that is one other thing that will now what creates a trust in the system. So we'll set up all of the policies, we'll set up the procedures, we've sent it out, we've communicated with all of the staff. How do we now handle a whistleblowing report when we get it? What is the procedure for us to handle it? we need to understand that the way we handle it would determine, especially the first one, maybe the second one, or even the third one, the way it is handled, the repercussions or the consequences or whatever that comes out of the first report that we handle would determine if employees would trust the process in the future. It will determine it because they can see what is going on. If we've handled it in such a way that a manager now goes back to victimize or to intimidate the person who blew the whistle, every other person can see what is going on. They'll be like, ah, Omo, don't talk. Oh. If you can't talk, you will just suffer for it. So we need to handle it very, very well. And even handling poorly can even expose the company to legal repercussions or even reputational repercussions, and even break down the employee relations, that's employee relationship with the organization. It can break it down. It can create a very huge gap between, because it's going to sow a seed of distrust in all of the employees, even the person that did not make the report, that just saw what is going on. It's going to sow that seed of distrust. Now, there are 5 steps. This is not limited to this, but I just came up with 5 steps that can help in handling it. It just highlighted a few things. So you first need to acknowledge that you've received the report, because people, they will be looking out for it, especially when it is an email that was sent or a text message that was sent. If it's a phone call, already on the phone call, you can just immediately say that, on the phone call, you can just immediately say that, sorry, just a minute. All right. Because on the phone call, you can just immediately say, yes, thank you for your reports. We would work on it. But if you receive it via an email or a text message or even a Google form, if you can reach out, even though for Google Forms or any form of form, there's no point in collecting details of the person. But if it's via email, you can respond to the email saying, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We would look into it. And with a text message, you can also do the same thing. And then the first thing is what? Preliminary assessment. And that preliminary assessment just speaks to what you need to check if the report you have now gotten is within the scope of what you need to address, is within the scope of what you need to address. And then you will not check if there is a need for more information. Do you need more information from even the person that has reported the situation? And so you can reach out and just get more information as much as they are ready to divulge. And then you determine what level of investigation is needed for that report that you have gotten. What level of investigation do I need to do a very deep dive? Do I need to reach out to customers? Do I need to create process? Do I need to now start monitoring the employee that has been reported? You need to now determine what level of investigation is needed. And then you investigate what? Discreetly. Once you determine the level of investigation, you now investigate discreetly. You cannot tip off who has been reported. You can't tip off the person that you're looking into. You've gotten a report and you're looking into it. You can't go and meet the person and be like, we heard that you are taking money from your suppliers. We are looking into it. No, you can't do that. So you investigate discreetly. You can even do like a mystery shopping, if it's like a shopping complex or where you offer services. You can do a mystery shopper that just goes into your restaurant or wherever, or your hotel, anywhere, or even tries to buy from the company and uses that particular person that's been reported to find out. And then from the report you get from the mystery shopper, that's you doing your investigations discreetly. And then you maintain strict confidentiality. I mentioned this before. It is a need to know kind of thing. You're not coming to Monday meeting with all the staff or even with all of the management and saying, oh, okay, for this month or for this week, we're investigating, we got 2 reports about fraud in the finance department and we're looking into it. People that make the payments, no, you cannot do that. It's a need to know basis. If it's a report about the finance manager, there has to be another leg for the finance manager. Maybe you have a CFO or even an internal audit a department that will look into it. So it's a need to know. You maintain strict confidentiality. Once you've done all of that and you've gotten all your information, what you need to now do is take corrective action. That means the findings. Yeah, from the findings, you act decisively. If you need to terminate, you terminate. If you need to suspend, you suspend. If you need to issue a final warning, you issue a final warning. But you need to what? Act decisively. And if it's something that you just need to, that is not, you find out to be untrue, then definitely you let that go. But once it's confirmed, you act decisively, but you have to be fair. You have to be fair. And then you take the person through your disciplinary process, and you probably also create new policy or look at what the policy is and tweak it to guide against such. For instance, if it's someone that's if, for instance, the whistleblowing is about an HR that has just been employing people that give him or her cutbacks, you might want to take the recruitment away from such a person. If you're not terminating such an HR person, you want to now assign recruitment to a different person entirely, with the strict instruction that for every recruitment process, for every recruitment, that staff cannot make any referral. You have to source for what's it called, for candidates yourself, shortlist them, and they will not bring any referral, no contacts wherever whatsoever. And you can also report to regulators, like for financial crimes. Once financial misconduct from whistleblowing, you can report to EFCC, to the police, to take further action. And then you do what? You provide feedback to the whistleblower. You let the whistleblower know, thank you for bringing to our attention. We've confirmed it and we've taken the right steps. Or if it's from a supplier, you can let the supplier know that from external and someone that has a continued relationship with the organization, can let him or her know that so the staff that they reported no longer works with the organization, and just provide a feedback to the whistleblower. Very importantly, document every stage, document the process, document every stage. There has to be a final report from all of it that states, we got this on this day, we started investigating. After we've confirmed, we investigated, these are some of the evidences that we're able to come up with. This is what we now did. We took the person through the disciplinary process. And at the end of the day, this is the outcome. Document every stage, document every of the process, not for anything, but for what? For future reference. And that brings us to the end of what whistleblowing and what it's all about. I'll take a pause. Please, if there are any questions, we can just drop it in the chat box. I can take a pause and just quickly attend to it before we get to the Q&A section. But if any questions, we can always drop it. So yes, so that summarizes everything about whistleblowing, how we can come up with a framework that actually works and gives us the desired effect at every point in time. Key things are what we need to be confidential about it, ensure that anybody that makes such a report is not exposed to any form of retaliation, any form of intimidation, any form of harassment due to the report that has been made. And we also need to ensure that we follow through on every report that we get, and we do it discreetly. We do it with utmost confidentiality. We provide feedback and we take decisive action. Please document every process, document every stage of that. Now, misconduct is something that we cannot run away from. And I put it here that while whistleblowing is about reporting issues, workplace misconduct is about the behavior itself. Workplace misconduct is what? About the behavior itself. It's all about the behavior itself that has now been termed as a misconduct. And misconduct is usually on something that goes against the rules and regulations of the company, or even of the country, of the country law where the company finds its expression in. Now, the actions by employee that breaches workplace misconduct are actions by employees that breaches policies, ethics, or laws. Misconduct is any behavior that violates company policies, employment contracts, or legal obligations. So it's something that violates what the company policies, it violates the employment contract. It's in the contract that you can only have 20 leave days in a year, and you find out that a staff has, for whatever reason, gained the system and now went on 22 days of annual leave. That extra 2 days is a misconduct that needs to be addressed. Now, misconduct can range from minor issues like lateness to serious offenses like theft or harassment. So that preludes us into what that there are two types of misconduct. There are two types of misconduct. There's the minor misconduct, which is some examples are lateness to work, poor timekeeping. You're meant to send in a report at 12, you're sending it by 1 without prior communication. Now, failure to follow minor procedures, and then dressing unprofessionally to the workplace. The workplace dress code is corporate, and they are wearing casuals to the office. Those are minor offenses. However, repeated minor offenses, especially within a very closed window, can now sum up to become what a gross misconduct, like theft, and there are other forms of gross misconduct are what theft, violence, fighting in the office space, harassment, fraud, and serious insubordination, and serious insubordination from a reporting line to a manager. So all employees need to know what counts as misconduct, either a minor one or a gross misconduct. You cannot exhaust all of it, but there are certain generic misconducts that need to be a part of the handbook, and then you can just state it there that and any other misconduct that will be investigated and communicated. But all employees need to know what counts. There needs to be probably a disciplinary policy, or even in the handbook, a section that lists out minor and gross misconduct and also states there what the penalty will be for any of it. And we are doing this just so we are avoiding any form of excuse of I didn't know. Oh, I didn't know I cannot use the company Uber for my personal work on Saturday. I thought it's just a given. Oh, I did not know that company car cannot carry external parties even when I am inside of the car, because there are some policies in car usage policies that strictly prohibits non-staff being inside of the company car, even when there is a staff inside. Let's say you have gone for a meeting, then you are leaving, and then the clients or whoever you went to meet is now saying, oh, I'm just going down the road, it's along your way now, let me follow you. For some companies, that is not allowed at all. It's always at every time needs to be used by what? By employees. So when you have a written out policy like misconduct list, it's going to guide against somebody telling you, oh, I didn't know, because you need to also at every time once there's a misconduct, you treat and address based on the situation and all information and evidence that you're able to gather. Now, they need to be clear definitions, and you will make what investigations, you do your investigations, and disciplinary action should be fairer and more consistent. The disciplinary action should be fairer and more consistent. Now, how do you handle misconduct? The way we handle misconduct, it tells a whole lot about the organization and what the culture is. It tells a whole lot. You cannot at every turn just start dishing out written warning letters or dismissal. An employee comes late the first day, and immediately I did tell the employee that for coming late, take your final warning letter. No. Or I'm not a fan. I've never been a fan of, because an employee comes late to the organization, to the company for that day, there's now a charge, a surcharge for coming late. I've never been a fan of that sort of action. Now you hear things like, oh, there are 1,000 naira for coming late, 1,000 naira from your salary for coming late, or for whatever reason the employee is unable to come to work that day, and then you are hearing things like, we'll be treating this day as a as a day that you did not work. Okay, so I'll take a pause and take a question from the chat box. From Ali. Ali says, what do you do in a situation where the information provided by the whistleblower turned out to be false? So when it turns out to be false, you still provide feedback to the whistleblower if that is possible. However, the feedback is just to let the person know, just to also reiterate that. Thank you for letting us know, bringing this to our attention. We've done our preliminary investigations and we've taken appropriate actions. Finish. But for you, what you do is you disregard. You just have it documented, but you disregard. There's no next step to take in that situation. Since it's just false, there's nothing to take in that situation. You just let it go. All right. So yes. Yeah, so I was saying I'm not a big fan of that, of all those surcharge for coming late or for not even coming, and then tell me that I'm taking out the 1 day from your salary, so that means you've worked 1 day less. I've never been a big fan of that because it tells a whole lot about what kind of culture that you are running. Because I know for some people, in Lagos, we had very, very wonderful traffic yesterday on the island, and some people go home at about midnight, expecting them to be in the office the next day. I know I had made the jest in my office today that I don't expect to see anybody that stays at Aja Access, Lekki in the office. I do not expect, just work from home. If it was not your day to work from home, please just work from home. Except you had very important and urgent meeting to take in the office, then I can now see you. And of which, really, once you come in and do your meeting, you can go home because it was already very strenuous. And it just goes to show the kind of culture that you as HR you're trying to build, or you as an organization you're pushing out there. And we can't afford for, when we're handling misconduct, to be inconsistent. Inconsistent in the sense that what has not happened when this person did the same thing. What you did was to either give a final warning, and then that person now does it and you just give a verbal one. You cannot be inconsistent or slow or even take too long to address it. What can now happen is that, well, you lose credibility. But if we are fair and firm, you build trust. Now, the goal is not even to punish. Really, the goal really is not to punish. The goal is what? Is to correct the behavior. That is the real goal of when we're handling misconduct, is not to punish, to correct behavior and protect the workplace and uphold standards. But in situations where it is a certain institution that borders on integrity and even fraud cases, really the goal for someone that was in somebody native, if you look at the gravity of it, it's not really to punish. It's just to correct that behavior. And now you have to start in handling misconduct. There has to be clear policies. It has to be clear. There has to be regular trainings to the managers, to even all the team members, letting them know that, okay, these are what the misconducts are, these are the consequences, and also reminders. And what this does is that if you're doing all of that, what it does, these clear policies, regular trainings, and reminders, what it does for you as an organization is that you reduce the risks, you reduce breaches that might happen with the organization, because employees tend to know the rules. It is fresh in their memories. Now you use internal controls, audits, supervisor checks, and even reporting channels to handle misconduct. Those are what you use to handle it. In audits, in the sense of checking, you can just go into a department and just check what their process is like, get a feel of what how each of the staff are feeling. And sometimes misconduct is discovered through whistleblowing and sometimes through routine or impromptu checks. If you have a store, for instance, and you just check in the store, you can quickly detect cases like theft if the store controller or the warehouse officer has been taking away some items from the store without properly documenting or any need for it. Now, you investigate promptly, fairly, and discreetly. You have to investigate for every misconduct that is being reported or that you find out you investigate promptly and discreetly, and also apply disciplinary procedures consistently, from verbal warnings down to termination, depending on the severity. I already said it before that we can't afford to give disproportionate consequences for misconduct. So it should not be a small infraction that gets a very big consequence. Now, document every step of the way. Document every step of what? Of the way. So, and this will also what? Protect the organization and also ensure employees' rights are being protected. And confidentiality to all parties. I've mentioned I work as HR 90% of the time, or even 100, confidentiality is really our bedrock. Proportionality, that is what the punishment should match the offense. The punishment should match the offense. And then we have no retaliation or complaints on witnesses. No retaliation or complaints or witnesses. So there's a question from Elo, and Elo says, how do you provide feedback to the whistleblower when it comes in anonymously? Yes, so once it's anonymous, if it's not through an email or a text message, so there's no need to provide a feedback. But 90% of the time, because that kind of whistleblowing is internal, the person is watching to see what will happen. So that's by the time they see the consequence, that is what the feedback that needs to be given. And next question is, once in a while we have events and sales personnel may be out till 12 or 1 a.m. I have ensured that an Airbnb be made available for them to sleep over, but MD insists they will resume work the next day. Note that these events may be on a Sunday. What will you suggest? If the MD insists that they be in the work on Sunday, you can plead for a concession for them to come in maybe later, as against probably resuming 9 a.m. That's resumption time. Can plead if they can resume later to probably about 10, 11, or 12. At the latest, you can plead for that. And if that is approved, then you go from there. However, if it is not approved, you keep fighting for them as much as you can, and then you keep speaking to them to please bear with you while you try to solve for something else for them. Yes, so that we've spoken to misconduct, what they look like, and how to handle it. Now, conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. This is one of the most common and quite very misunderstood issues in the workplace, and conflict of interest. Like, some people just think it speaks to, okay, I work in this organization and I'm working in a competing organization. That is wrong, but that is not the only extent to conflict of interest. It also covers certain other things that have to do with our everyday operations in the organization. For instance, it covers that what conflict of interest is when an employee's personal interest, whether financial, whether be it from the family or otherwise, interferes with their ability to act in the best interest of the organization. So basically, conflict of interest is saying what? Once you have something, once you're doing something, or once something influences your decision against acting in the best interest of the organization that you're employed in, you have a conflict of interest already. That is what it means. So it is not just because you're working somewhere else, but down to family. Now, conflict of interest will exist when personal interest or that of your close relative or associates improperly influences your decisions or actions at work. I know it's the same thing, but I just had to give two different definitions, for one of it has to resonate very well with you. So once anything influences how you do your work, you carry out your work every day, and it doesn't make you execute it fairly or the way you would have, you have a conflict of interest. And these are some of the ways that conflict of interest can manifest. You're working in company A, but you have a financial stake or you have shares with country B as maybe a shareholder, as even maybe a vendor or a controller or a competitor, a contractor or a competitor. Or for instance, you're working in a place, you have a side hustle, and because of your side hustle, you are not coming, you left your workplace by 2 o'clock. I know I just threw stone at a lot of people with this example. Yes, you have conflict of interest as at that time. because you are now doing your side also during work hours, on company work hours, on company time, and you expect to be paid in full. So at that moment, what you have conflict of interest. I'm sorry for throwing the stone. If it hits you, please just put a bandage and let us continue. Now, you have a conflict of interest also what it can manifest in when you're awarding contracts or hiring, but you are now, your decision is being influenced because what maybe your uncle has sent in a proposal, or in the hiring process, you see your nephew's CV. But when you are going through the interview, you notice that your nephew does not cut it and you just say, no, we are going to employ this person by all means. That is what a conflict of interest, especially when in that kind of situation, you do not disclose it that you know this person and recuse yourself. That means what? Remove yourself from the entire process. You have at that moment what? A conflict of interest. And also it manifests when supervisors are dating subordinates or making decisions that favor someone they have a relationship with. So necessarily, conflict of interest isn't a misconduct. It is not necessarily a misconduct. It becomes a misconduct really when it is consistent, it is not disclosed, and it's affecting the business. That is when it becomes a misconduct. But if there's a conflict of interest and you've disclosed it well ahead of time, and the company knows, you have exempted yourself from a misconduct. So they naturally know what to expect. What the company now does is what they create a process to reduce the risks that might arise from conflict of interest. Now, what makes it wrong really is failing to disclose and acting based on, you're not acting based on the fact that, okay, nobody knows, I'll just be doing this continuously. Transparency allows the organization to manage or mitigate conflicts before they become a process. So if you are transparent enough to let the company know, okay, this is what I'm doing, and the company accepts you to have that, or I have shares in this other company, but I'm coming to join you, I have shares in this company, and they are a competitor, and they say, okay, fine, why not? Please continue. And you have helped the organization to mitigate and reduce any problem that might happen. Now, for instance, now I put in here that procurement officers in government and private organizations are frequently required to sign conflict of interest declaration because of the high risks of favoritism in awarding contracts. They are frequently made to sign, and in that document, it states, oh, I don't know this vendor, I know this vendor, this is my relationship with the vendor, this is what I do with this person, and all those kind of things. In government, they are made to sign regularly, and in some organizations, they are made to, for every vendor that they bring in, especially, they will just write it, there will be a waiver form that they fill out. How do you manage conflict of interest? Now, it's inevitable in any organization. It is inevitable in any organization. There will always be a conflict of interest in every organization. Each and every one of us, at one point or the other, we've been in a situation where we've sacrificed company time to attend to personal dealings. That at that moment was a conflict of interest. Now, the issue is not their existence, but how they are managed. It is not really the matter that it exists, it's also a matter of how it is managed. Now, proper managing it protects the organization from biased decisions, legal exposure, and even reputational harm. Because if somebody finds out that the only reason this person is supplying water to this company is because the procurement officer or whoever is in charge of that process is his brother-in-law, if that person takes the company to court, you will pay damages because your process was not fair. There was no bid to ensure that the best person comes out on top. Now, put it in writing. How do you manage it as an HR person? You create a policy around it. You now put it in crisis that, see, these are some of the things that we count as conflict of interest. You define what it is in the context of the organization. You define what it is, and then you let staff know how they can disclose it to the organization, and you let them know what will happen when they report it by themselves or when somebody else reports it to the organization. You state it out, the consequence or the consequence for reporting or not reporting by yourself or from external parties. Now, Employees in high-risk roles like procurement, finance, HR, marketing, operations, you can ask them to consistently. I know in some organizations what they do is that every year, the beginning of the year, the beginning of the fiscal year, people in such high-risk roles, they sign new forms declaring that, okay, any vendor that we brought in the past, after the last one that we signed, I don't know them from Adam. I have no relationship with them. So they just require that. And there's some people it's every quarter. Now, not all conflicts are fatal. Some can be managed by recusal. That, like I said, some can be managed by the person just stepping away from that process entirely, or you even change the reporting line, or you reassign the client, the vendor, to somebody else within the department, and then they will not be supervisory oversight on them. Managers, as HR managers, should be able to spot subtle signs of conflicts, such as repeated awards to one vendor every time it is one person that that is being used for these events, one person that is being used for this, and every single time it's not as if there is competitive bidding. You're not saying two or three people should present a quote, and then you now go with the person that offers the same service cheaper and for the required quality, because I'm not compromising on quality because it's cheaper. So in situation where that is non-existent, you should know already that like there's already a conflict of interest there. There's something going on that you're always using this person. Maybe it's because at the end of the year, the vendor will bring hamper to HR and say, HR, thank you for giving us all of your TGIF to plan. This is hamper, and inside the hamper there are a lot of things. Maybe it's because of that. That already is a conflict of interest, because they're only using that person because of personal gratification, or it's always sending you lunch for that time, or there's one spa gift that they send to you, gift card that is being sent at the end of every quarter. And then all of a sudden there's a price change, be it that the price comes down or not. Once there's all of a sudden the price just change, you should be able to investigate immediately and say, okay, why did this price change? Why did it come down? Why did it go up? What is going on? And report should be given back to you. To manage conflict of interest effectively, there has to be transparency, there has to be consistency, documentation, which now builds what? Credibility within the system. So yes, in conclusion, policies must be practical. It should not just be a paper thing. They have to be practical. So your whistleblowing policy, your framework, your misconduct handling of it, workplace misconduct, and even your conflict of interest, it has to be practical. It's not just a paper thing. It has to be something that is well thought through and practical. Now, staff need to be trained on what to do, and they should feel safe doing it at every time, even when declaring conflict of interest. I know many times why many people do not let organizations know that this is my side hustle is because the organization can, because of that, sack them or even tell them don't do it at all. People should be able to feel free and safe to come and let you know what that is. Their management must respond quickly and fairly when issues arise. You need to respond quickly and fairly. And then the ethical culture of the organization is everyone's responsibility, even down to the cleaner, down to the security person. It is everyone's responsibility to ensure that what the ethics is being kept and integrity is kept safe. Policies protect the organization and its people, encourage openness, fairness, and accountability. Policies are not enough. Staff must understand them. They need to understand them. They need to believe in them. And belief really comes from how you handle all the issues that they present. And then they should see them enforced consistently and fairly across board, not just to people who are under, but even at the top. Then leadership's tone to all of this process is very, very, very critical. If the leaders are ethical, if they act right, every other person will follow. But if the head of department is already a thief, is already siphoning, is already influencing decision-making process because of one or two things, you don't you would most likely have others underneath that are what that are doing the same thing. So there's a question from the chat box from Precious, and it says, how do you investigate a grievous anonymously written whistleblown one-off incident? Please, I'll need more context to that to be able to give an answer. So Precious, Amos Precious, please, if you can probably expatiate on that. But I think I've already mentioned one of the things. So when you receive a whistleblowing report and you're not sure, you don't really understand, you ask for more information. And that's what I just did in more special. So that's one of the ways to investigate grievous whistleblowing incident. But please, I will need um, more insight on that. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the presentation this evening. Thank you all for listening to the sound of my voice. If we have any questions or contributions at this time, please, we can feel free to raise our hands or drop it in the chat box, and I would try my best to answer alongside other colleagues that are on the call this evening. Hello, Amos. Maybe you can use the mic to probably ask the question that you have dropped in the chat box.
Any questions? Any comments? Any contributions? I think one or two questions are in the chat. You can check. If you
Okay,
want to
yes,
speak
sir.
now, you can unmute.
Yes, please. So Noah has asked a question. Please, how do you handle the issue of late coming, especially head of departments parallel to HR manager, and not care what he's saying simply because they don't report to HR? I think I think in the past this question has come up before, where someone had asked this, and one thing that I had mentioned was, if it is the head of the department that is coming late, I want to believe that he or she is reporting to someone also. Because organizations, the way it is run, even CEO, MDs report to board. They have somebody that they report to. So yeah, the head of department has to have somebody they report to. And if HR has spoken with the head of department to explain why he or she needs to be early to work, to set an example for their team, and they still persist and do not and they do not come to work early, then HR can take it up with whoever is the manager for that head of department to now address it. But I typically do not want to believe that when you have a proper conversation with people to even understand why first they are consistently coming late. You also need to understand why first they're consistently coming late. Because some people, one thing that they do is that, oh, I've worked till late the previous day. That means I'm exempted from resuming early. You might want to tell such a person that, see, if that is the case, Oga, once it's closing time, be going to your house. Once it's closing time, be going what? To your house. And then also, there is also the possibility of, let's say, for instance, this person's the workplace is at Lekki Phase 1, and he or she is staying at Mowe. You might want to advise such a person to maybe look for a house closer, but have that conversation first. Find out why they are coming that late. And if you have addressed it, they don't have one very cogent reason, please take it up with whoever the manager of this head of department is. So any other questions? Amos Precious, I'm still waiting for further details on your question, so we can address that also. Any other question or contribution really doesn't have to be a question, it can also be a contribution. Okay, I take it that there are no other questions or contributions. So once again, thank you all, and thank you once again, Dr. Yemi, for this privilege. I do not take it for granted. I shall be back very soon once again with
Thank you so much,
further
Kunle.
talking points.
Thank you.
Thank you,
We can unmute and
everyone.
thank Kunle, please. Let's do so. Thank you so much, Kunle. I enjoyed the session.
Thank you so much, Kule.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.